Welcome back to another video, and today we're going to be working on the E36 M3. Ever since I bought this vehicle, I've noticed there has been a slight belt squeal going on at idle. And that is typically related to either a bad tensioner, a bad pulley, or maybe one of the serpentine belts is getting older. So basically what we're going to do is we're just going to replace it all. So let's go over some of the parts that you're going to want to have for when you're going to be doing this to your M3. Now this should work for essentially any E30 and almost all E36s as well, just because they run off of a very similar engine platform. The only difference is you might have some different accessories in different locations, but this is going to be a general walkthrough of all those. So everything you see here is what we're going to be using to replace all the tensioners, the pulleys, and the belts on the E36 M3, as well as some specialty tools that you're going to want to have just to make the job a lot easier. Now everything you see here comes in a kit aside from the tools at ECS Tuning. I will throw the link in the description below for everything you see here. The tools are going to be a separate link, and then all these tensioners, pulleys, and belts will be one kit that is all put together nicely for you to purchase. Now going through these parts, I wanted something that's going to hold up longevity wise as well as have some good performance to them. So fortunately ECS does offer this tensioner as a full assembly. This bracket does bolt up to the block itself, and you can sometimes just get this tensioner by itself and have to separate this whole assembly, re-grease everything. Fortunately this does come as one whole unit, as well as with the new pulley and all the bolts that you're going to need. So this one in particular is going to be for the AC system, I believe, which is going to be the front pulley system and belt. And here is going to be the belt that's going to pair with that. This is a Continental belt, super good ones. And then this is going to be your main accessory belt. And then you have all your tensioner, your pulleys, and new hardware as well for that primary one. Also, it does come with a nice little diagram to show you how everything assembles, which is always good. So before ordering all this, I ordered the special fan clutch tools, just because this one goes on the fan itself, and then this one mounts to the water pump so that you can take off the fan clutch or the fan because it is reverse threaded. However, once I just now started popping the hood on the M3, I noticed that I actually have an electric water pump, which makes these tools obsolete. So in order to get started here, you are most likely going to have to remove your intake if you still have a factory intake. Fortunately, I have an aftermarket one, so it kind of gives me a little more working space here. And you may want to also remove your cruise control and kind of fold that back out of the way. So getting started with this, I do have a metal skid plate underneath, so I'm going to have to get the car up in the air, remove that so I have some working room underneath to start loosening all the tensioners. So now I have the M3 up in the air. I removed the skid plate that was over there, and I also took off some brake ducting that was kind of failing. But now we have full access through to the bottom, and what you're going to want to do from here is loosen up those kind of shock looking tensioners. Then you can remove both the bottom pulley system and then the top one, but make sure you draw a little diagram so you don't forget the layout of those belts. So after removing the little intake shroud for the alternator, you can come down here and see the shock tensioners kind of just below the oil filter here. You can tighten that one and you can slip the serpentine belt off, and on the bottom as well, down there kind of in the center, you can see this one right here. You can do the same. Tighten this guy so it compresses, and you can slip the AC the AC belt that kind of wraps around there and the crank pulley. You can take that one off as well. The easiest way to take the belt off around the compressor is going to be using this bolt right here. You're going to tighten it, which is going to compress this kind of shock tensioner, and you'll be able to slip the belt off. You can remove these 3 bolts here, 1, 2, and 3. Then this whole assembly will just come off nice and easy. So now that we have this one out, you can see that the pulley on this bracket just spins super freely, which is a no-no. That's how you know that the pulley is kind of dying. There should be a good amount of resistance on here to where it should slow down gradually. And as well as the shock, no leaking, which is good to see, but we're just going to replace it anyway. So now we have the new tensioner and the new pulley in there. as you can see, doesn't spin super freely, and we have the new shock in there as well. One key thing to ensure that you don't get any squeaking is to make sure that you're greasing any of the rotating points. So there's a little slide that the shock sits on, or the little tensioner sits on in here. Putting a little grease there is just going to help that as well. Now, to remove the top serpentine belt, you're going to need to get an 8mm Allen, and it's very helpful if you put that on a socket, as you can see right down there. You're going to want to tighten that pulley, which is connected to the tensioner. That will release all the tension off the belt. Then you can slide it off, and then you can start removing that tensioner bracket. One thing that I noticed with this process here is going to be the new tensioner system, tensioner and pulley system for the top. Here is the old one. One thing is this bolt right here, you can see on the new one and on the old one, is you can't access this very easily unless you remove this pulley. So we're going to have to install this new pulley once we get the whole tensioner bracket and the tensioner on. Then we can get in here with the new hardware and torque this new one on. The difference though is this is now a star pattern, which kind of is more challenging now, because you're just going to have more tools available to you. Based off the information from what I could find, all of the bolts that are going to be holding the tensioners and the brackets are going to be about 18 foot-pounds, and then anything that's holding an idler is going to be about 33 foot-pounds. Now, I encourage you guys to do the research yourself, but these are the numbers that I'm going to be going with. And so now with that, you can go ahead and install your tensioner and pulleys back in the sequence that you took them off. And we also have this additional idler pulley, that this is going to be the one that sits over the alternator, and we can replace this one as well. Now, when reassembling everything, like I said before, I believe it's 33 foot-pounds for these idlers, which does go well with when I was putting the belt on. It was torquing immediately, and then the tensioner started to compress, allowing me to slip the belt over all the pulleys in the diagram that I had written down before. And now I'm just double checking everything now that there's some tension on it, making sure the torque is correct. Again, 18 for any of the hardware that's mounting brackets and the tensioners, and then 33 for the idlers. Now that I have the main serpentine belt on, I can now go to the bottom one, which is going to be the compressor, the AC compressor, and the crank pulley with the one tensioner bracket that goes here in this empty spot. So again, double check your diagram, make sure all of your belts are on correctly. Check all the torques on all of those bolts with the brackets and the idlers. Make sure everything is all finished. And from here you can start reassembling everything, putting the duct back to the alternator, putting your intake back on, putting your cruise control back. Fortunately, I didn't have that issue. And then you would also put your clutch, your fan back on with those specialty tools. I was able to do it without having to remove my electric fan, which is nice. Now you can start wrapping everything up, putting your splitter back on or your under tray, lowering the car back down. One thing you can do though before you kind of put everything back together is start the vehicle, make sure everything runs smoothly and you don't have any issues. After that, go ahead and take it on a test drive and just recheck everything, and that's pretty much it. One thing that I noticed about the kit is it's just missing one bolt that I think I would add additionally if you were checking out. I will also add that down below, but the idler pulley bolt that originally was a 8mm hex, I would also replace that one, just like the upper tensioner assembly. That one was replaced with a torque bit, which was a 45, a T45. I'd also want to order a new one of those as well, just because that one was starting to show signs that it was starting to fail, and something that I would consider replacing as well. Just because that one down there at the bottom is an older one, and it's nice to throw new hardware everywhere when you're doing something. And the car is now idling smooth and everything looks great. So overall, I'm really happy with this kit. It was pretty much all-encompassing except just that one little bolt that I would consider adding. All of the belts matched perfectly, they were the right size, and it was a good time to replace these older ones just because they were starting to kind of show a little cracking. But they weren't ready to snap anytime soon, but definitely were showing some wear. But this is definitely going to be a remedy for the belt squeak that I was having. So hopefully I don't notice that anymore in the future with these new pulleys, tensioner, and the belts. So again, I will include everything that I used in this video down in the description below for you to check out and purchase for yourself. And again, this will pretty much cover most E36s, not just the M3, and this should give you a little bit of insight if you're going to do something like this to an E30. But that is pretty much going to be it for today's video. I'm going to go take the M3 out for a little drive, but thank you all for watching. I will see you all on the next one.